Welcome to Local Leverage, your competitive edge in business. Today's guest is living proof that no matter where you start, you have the ability to reshape your financial future. Raised in Section 8 housing and shaped by adversity, this entrepreneur went on to lead a top 10 real estate office that produced over $2 billion in sales. But she didn't stop there. She built, scaled, and sold her own insurance agency before pivoting her focus towards something even bigger, advocating for the financial freedom of women. Now she runs a coaching platform helping women entrepreneurs get clear on their numbers, protect their assets, and grow their wealth with intention. Today we're diving into her plays on navigating SBA loans as a business owner, best practices when selling a company, and strong intentionality around building and maintaining the right mindset. Without further delay, please welcome the founder of Empower Her Money, Angela Duncan. Angela, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. Boy, you have a great backstory that I'd like to maybe start with. I know you grew up in Section 8 housing and some poverty and some tough situations, and now have really gone fully the other direction to helping other people, women in particular, to realize financial success and freedom. But I'm curious, in your journey, what was that inflection point? What was the moment where you said, you know what, I'm not going to have this lifestyle. I'm going to create a different life for myself?
Yeah, I think when you grow up in poverty, you don't always know that you don't have money compared to other people. I would ask my mom the same question, like, why don't we go on vacation? Why do we live in a small house? Why don't you have a car? And her response would always be the same, is we don't have money. And so I just thought that's a normal thing. We don't have money, not a big deal. But I think it was when I was 16 years old and I saw one of my friends. Her parents had bought her a car. They put a big ribbon on it. It was her 16th birthday. She was getting her driver's license, and there it was in the parking lot. And I was getting on the city bus to go home. And I was like, okay, whatever this money thing is, I need to figure it out because I don't like not having this money, and I want to be able to do things that I see other people. So I started the journey in college, was studying finance and stockbroker and real estate, and that kind of really opened my eyes to a completely different world because, when you don't have it, you don't know. But then when you see it, knowing you don't have it, it was something that I wanted to strive towards.
It's interesting, too. I mean, beyond just the education around money or finance, there's also the mindset. And to your point, like if you grow up with that scarcity, like we just don't have this, I'm sure there was also a mindset shift that was required. Did that occur at the same time for you? And how did you make the transition from scarcity to abundance, if that's even the path you took?
Yeah, very early on, I had some great mentors in my life, and I didn't know it at the time. You don't know what a mentor is, but I just had some incredible women. I was working for a bank at the time, and I was studying to get my securities license, and there were a couple of just powerhouse females that would walk into a room, very confident, head held high, and you could tell that they just knew what they were, trying to teach people. They were taking care of their clients. And they kind of took me under their wing, and they're, taught me how to approach clients and helping them with their money in a way that just felt comfortable for a woman because, people say the differences between men and women, especially when it comes to sales and money, there are vast differences. Women tend to think with their heart. They give from their heart. We ask for less raises. We go after smaller incomes. We live longer. So all of these things put together really make it important for women, especially to understand money, to invest wisely, and to ensure that we're doing it for the reasons that feel good to us as individuals.
Do you see that gap between men and women and kind of the way they approach money? Is that narrowing? Is it changing at all? I mean, it feels like just if I look at maybe my mom's generation versus mine or now my child's, like it feels like we're going the right direction. But are you seeing that as the way that in terms of how women approach money and freedom?
Yeah, definitely here in the U.S. I've done a lot of traveling throughout the world, so we are the leaders when it comes to that. And I will say that we have a lot of supportive males, especially, I'm in the money industry. I've been in real estate, I've been in insurance, I've been in stock markets. So this is traditionally a very male-dominated world, but I feel like we now have the support of not just the females that are leading the way in the industry, but also our male counterparts that aren't seeing us for men or women. They're seeing us as more what do you bring to the table? What kind of gifts, what kind of talents do you have? And how can we mirror that together and work together for the ultimate goal, which is helping our clients? We want to help clients build generational wealth. We want to help them invest, figure out what works for them, what are their goals. And even though we might approach things differently, us working together really helps the client with a complete picture. And I love that opportunity and how we've definitely grown as a country.
Yeah, agreed. I think financial literacy, though, in itself is still lacking. I mean, I have a son that's graduating college now, and he hasn't really had that exposure. I mean, we've given him some ourselves, but as a matter of fact, I just had a conversation with him. I really want him to get focused on financial literacy and the ways to build wealth, because I don't think that's part of our normal education system.
Definitely. As us as parents, we have to understand that that shift of responsibility is on us. And it's challenging for some people who didn't grow up with that type of financial education, right? How do we teach what we don't know? But I think it's a great challenge because if we want to teach them what we don't know, that means that we have to learn it as well. And so not only are we giving ourselves the education to help us in our, current situation, but now we're going to teach our children as well. And you probably went through this too. So anyone who has children out there that is taking on that responsibility of teaching your children, congratulations. It's an awesome step. The one thing I feel I missed as a parent, because my daughter's about to graduate college as well, is making sure that she was around other kids her age whose parents were taking on that responsibility too. Because what I saw with her in college, and it was kind of sad to watch at times, is it was hard for her to relate to some of the other children. She's very entrepreneurial.
Right.
She's talking about, starting her own business in elementary school and, spitting out marketing techniques in high school. And the other kids are like, I just want to go outside and play. Or, she's in college, they want to go to the bar, they want to go drink. And she's just not at that point because she was raised differently and she thinks differently. So I do challenge parents too, and we're teaching financial education, not only to teach it to your children, but to surround them with other parents that are doing the same so that they don't feel that loneliness because they are thinking differently than what the traditional school is teaching them.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you go about that tactically? I mean, you obviously don't know these kids or their parents, but how are you trying to surround her with that group of people?
Yeah, for me, it started more so in her high school years. I started to bring her to events with me. And, some parents would say, oh, that's such a great idea. I'm going to bring my daughter or my son to the next event. Or I've been teaching them. Maybe we can get together or plan a vacation or, just anything that we can do as a family unit together to help our kids see that they're not the only ones being taught this way. I'm dating myself a little bit, but when my favorite magazine, Success Magazine, used to put these CDs in the magazine, I would pop that in the car. And if it was my carpool with my daughter and maybe the neighborhood kids, they're going to listen to what I'm listening to because this is my way of teaching her, through like subliminal message, right?
Yeah, sneaky.
But what I found later is that she was using the language that she heard. So if I can help impact some of those other kids when it's my carpool time, we're not listening to music. Sorry, I'm the bad mom. We're going to listen to what I want to listen to. But today podcast, you can easily jump on a podcast and help influence some of those other kids with some of that information as they get curious or maybe their parents ask you, then it's a great way for us to bring everybody together and kind of teach them. I used to teach Dave Ramsey, Financial Peace University. I think it's a great starting point for people who don't have any financial education background, and they do offer a kids course. So that's a great way for you to get your kids started. But you need to continue the education because I do believe he gets you to a certain level. But as you know, real estate investing, debt, a lot of things that we know that we use to our advantage, he doesn't teach. And so it's a good platform to start on.
Yeah. I think it's interesting what you bring up about kind of who they surround themselves with because we stretched for our son at least and put him into schools where he was surrounded by a lot of affluence it's both good and bad, right? I mean, he sees how other folks are living. He can see kind of what's possible, but on the other side of that, he sees people that maybe aren't working as hard as he might have to for it, and it's been an interesting dissonance to help him navigate as he's grown up.
Yeah. And, being able to see those different sides is going to be a great advantage. You might not know it growing up. Often, times kids don't always see that. But as they get older, being able to see different sides. And I think that was part of why, as part of our church, we would go on a mission trip so that we would leave the country and go see how other families, other cultures, other children, how they grow up so that you can see these huge advantages that we have in the U.S., even at the poverty level, right?
Right.
To expose them to that so that they have a good heart and a good understanding that our purpose here is not just to have the dollar at the end of the day, but it's the impact that we can make for us, our family, and for everybody who's around us.
Yeah, I love that. My son had an opportunity to go to Guatemala and volunteer some time, and he was literally working at a refuse site, like a dump, where there was all these shanties and kids were there and going to school. And boy, I think that was probably one of the most impactful experiences he had throughout his high school. It was seeing that and understanding how privileged we are, even if you don't have all the money in the world.
Yeah, congratulations to you to, helping encourage for him to do that at such a young age because it will stay with him forever.
Yeah, I think so. Well, let's talk about your journey a bit more in business, because you went on from getting a financial education and background to starting into real estate and building up a $2 billion real estate platform with Remax. And I'm curious, how you went about building that, and maybe kind of what are the systems and processes you had to put in place to build and manage that size of a team.
Yeah. So first, I did start off my career as a stockbroker. I really thought that learning about the stock market, the crazy movies that were out would teach you that's where the money is, right? But I didn't have the heart for that, and I didn't have the stomach to control how up and down the stock market would go, and then my clients' portfolios would go hand in hand, right?
Right.
So I got into real estate in 2007. I'm really good at getting into markets right before they start to
I was just
downturn.
saying, tough time.
But I really feel that when you do that, you have to learn the right way to navigate through those markets, right? Because when the market's good, anybody can sell real estate. But when you're in a downturn, you really have to learn the game of real estate. You have to learn comps. You have to learn marketing. You have to learn sales, all of these techniques that go into a business. And then taking that and then teaching the people who decide to join you. So we had a process that we would go through. We didn't add just any agent. We weren't looking for agent counts. We wanted people who matched our culture. Because I think that when you have people on your team that match your culture, you can teach them the techniques, but the culture comes from inside. It comes from their background, their upbringing, and it's really difficult to change that. We would go even as far as, and this goes back to my Dave Ramsey days, is we would interview not only our candidate, but their plus one. If they were married, had a girlfriend, boyfriend, who did they live with? Because you can teach them all of, the amazing techniques in the world, but if they have to go home to crazy, they're going to bring crazy back to the office with them. So we were very protective of that culture. And I think when you do that and you have great leadership and you tell them that you care and you want to show them, how to create budgets, what to do with their commissions, how to invest. I brought in CPAs and financial advisors. Not only is it about making money, but how do we create money for your generations? And then we would volunteer together. We'd have our agents pick different charities that were impactful, meaningful to them, and we would go as a group and we would, volunteer our time or go to a soup kitchen or donate toys. It's just when you create the environment that helps people, I think that's when the sales aspect of it comes much easier, because we all want to win together. We don't want to be that person that's left behind or is not pulling our weight or is that not contributing. I think that was a big part of us selling $2 billion in sales and being a top Remax office in the country. So during the hardest times, we were able to do that.
That's really impressive, especially during that time. And it sounds like much of that was a cultural decision, and some of the things you just mentioned there, most companies aren't leaning into their employees in that way. That's really special that you built that. Did you find that that the accountability and this kind of happened then, or were there also systems in place to drive people in those times when they had to really be putting in more reps than normal?
Oh, when you're spending the kind of money we did on marketing, there was definitely accountability, and it was very public. We didn't do necessarily one-on-one coaching, but we would do it as a team and as a group. What are our sales this week? How many contracts have you put under contract? And we go all the way back to How many times did the phone ring? How many leads did we get? How many leads were, connected to each agent? And what was your conversion ratio? What are you struggling with? What kind of scripts do you need help with? And you need to be able to be vulnerable and open to, suggestions and recommendations, because our goal ultimately is to help you grow, for you to help more people and to help you financially. So when you understand that and you can teach someone and they can feel that from you, I really believe that they want to be part of this, moving ship, so to say.
Right.
But yeah, accountability is super important. But you as the business owner have to know your own information, your own numbers. Otherwise, how do you hold anybody accountable?
For sure. For sure. Now, at the same time that you were building that Remax business, you were also standing up an insurance business. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I have a little bit of a control issue. I definitely have to admit this. But we were finding that, our certain partners weren't delivering the service that we provided. We wanted to be Nordstrom. When you just have a commodity like real estate where anybody can go and open a door for you, how do we differentiate ourselves? It's the level of service. So we added a title company so that we can help control the employees that were there. We wanted them to be part of our culture. And then when we found out what insurance multiples are as a business owner, insurance is very unique. When you sell or buy an insurance agency, it's based on gross revenue, not what you make at the end of the day. You could have a business that makes $0 and still be $1 million company. Well, I'm the numbers person. I understand the numbers piece of it. So when we saw that our insurance company was converting only about 2% of the leads we were giving them, and the multiple that we would have had to pay to be a partner with them, no. I said, I'm going to go get my insurance license. It can be that difficult, right? Yeah,
Right.
sure.
Sure.
I had a huge learning curve on that one. And again, got into the market right before, I got in 2018, right before we had the toughest market in Florida. But it was the only way that I could learn. So I'm very happy that we added that component, because then it just helps to take that whole process for the client, either buying or selling real estate, and keeping that level of service, which we thought was so important.
Wow. And then you built that up to the point where you ended up selling that entity, correct?
I did.
How,
I love headhunters, but one of my top salespeople got headhunted into another company that could pay him a lot more than I was able to at the time. And it kind of broke my heart, which it does sometimes for business owners. When you spend a lot of time with someone, you build them up and you think they're going to be there for the long haul. But you have to sit back and reflect and know that I got him to that point to where that other company wanted him on their team. So felt good about that, felt bad about leaving him. And we were still in a super tough market in Florida. I was like, I'm done. It's time for me to move on. I did a lot of praying and reflecting on it, and it was just time for me to exit. So you have to take time to make sure you've got systems in place, make sure that your financials are in order and being tracked properly, replacement of people, and then finding the right buyer, and then negotiating. We did create a finance deal, but negotiating something that made sense for both sides.
yeah, that's great. I mean, in a tough time, tell us a bit more about that packaging of the business. I mean, as you approach that, I totally understand the need for having the systems and the financials all in order. But what did it look like to make the determined decision that I'm going to sell this business and then go about packaging it in a way that made it attractive?
Yeah, so your systems need to be written. Someone needs to be able to read them, to hire someone and be able to train them based on that. So making sure that everything is in writing is very important. I've always been a QuickBooks person. I've been tracking my financials since I was 18, so I'm very good at doing that. So if you're not, you need to hire a bookkeeper. Make sure that all of the information is accurate and correct, because your buyer is going to scrutinize every single detail of the money, and that's important. Also making sure that you have a conversation with any key employees. Not everybody in the company needs to know that you're selling, but the ones that are going to be impacted the most from a heart standpoint definitely needed to make sure that they were on board and that they understood what was going on and that they were going to be protected, and negotiating that. And then when it came to the price, well, thankfully, even though we were in a very difficult insurance market, knowing the multiples that are in your own industry is very important. And then figuring out a deal, because when you grow large companies, sometimes you can have a great hedge fund that's going to come in and buy you. Sometimes the buyer can get an SBA loan, which, fun fact, SBA loans right now has a lower interest rate than you can buy in real estate. So I think that we can totally go off topic on that one. But then working out a deal for the buyer. For me, we did a revenue share. Most times, if a new buyer wants to keep the old CEO on board, they can do a rev share and they can keep them on board for a certain amount of time. So mine is 5 years, which just means for the next 5 years after we close, I can continue to refer business and still have an increase in revenue, which I got paid out. So for me, that was a
Great.
win-win situation for both of us.
Did you navigate this whole process yourself, or did you have an investment banker? How did you
Yes,
approach that?
I believe in coaches and mentors. Even before I knew what that was, I've always had coaches and mentors. So whenever I'm going through something and navigating something through business that I don't fully understand or feel like I'm the expert, which is very little, then I'm going to go seek out professional advice. And that money that you spend or invest in that is highly recommend and worth it for me because they taught me some things that I didn't know. They helped see some things of the weaknesses of the businesses that I didn't really think about. So yeah, I definitely had someone else involved on my side to be able to help me with that.
Yeah, I think that's super wise. I haven't been through a few transactions myself. I definitely see the value in that. Did they help you build your pitch book and then also go shop the market for you?
There were only a couple buyers for me, so when we put it together as a package, you present it, you go seek out the buyer. In my instance, that's what we did. But I read the book by Cody Sanchez recently, and I think one of the things and I like to look back at what I could have done better, how I failed. I didn't have my what's next. I was so focused on the sale piece of it that I didn't have something I was going to jump right into. And that created for me seller's remorse. Oh, I could have done it better. I could have gotten a better deal. I serviced the clients better. So I didn't have my what's next. And so if I recommend to anyone, if you're going to exit a company, make sure you have something. You're not going to travel the world. You're not going to go play golf all day. You really need something to occupy your time, especially if you're an entrepreneur.
Having been there, I'm curious about this. How did that hit you? What did that come in the form of, like a little mini depression, or what did you feel? You obviously go through that elation that you've sold the business. What hit you next?
Yeah, I started dipping my toe back in, and the new owner's like, I don't need you to handle that. We got it. And then I would insert myself somewhere else. Nope, I got it. And then, you just wake up and you realize that you're not needed anymore. And that's
Right.
kind of a tough pill to swallow. But I needed something else to focus on. And so then went right into a couple other projects. And I think I'm ready to build again. It's just a matter of figuring out what that looks like.
Well, it's good that you had some other projects or interests teed up, to your point.
Yeah.
Yeah, my own experience there was a little bit of the same depression, like, oh gosh, I should have gone a little bit further with it, or I should have done this differently. But once you've sold the house or sold the car, if somebody wants to burn it down or drive it off a bridge, that's right, that's their prerogative, and you don't get to dictate that anymore.
Yeah.
That's tough. Yeah. So I'm going to double back to your comment about SBA because I'm curious. I mean, I also see the same opportunities there. Tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing with SBA, either both interest rates and process, but what opportunities is that creating for entrepreneurs that want to get into business, or maybe even add to their existing business by augmenting?
Yeah, so an SBA loan, a Small Business Association loan, is meant for people purchasing, businesses. And I think the limit right now is $5 million. Don't hold me to that. But if you're looking to buy a business and you need a loan from the bank, it's a great product for you to be able to use. Now, it's difficult, it's long, so understand and have patience with your banker when you're going through this process because they need a lot of paperwork. But this is a government loan, and government does want you to be in business. Most of the employees of this country work for small businesses, and so they're incentivizing us to buy businesses utilizing this loan, and by doing that, they offer us a lower interest rate. So I looked at SBA loans a couple weeks ago. If you're going to go buy a house right now, right? I'm in real estate as well. So if you're going to go buy a house and you're going to go get an FHA or any type of loan, you're looking at least, 6.5, 6.75, depending on what you are as a buyer. But if you want to go buy a business, then your interest rate is going to be under 5%. So that baffles me because, one, would a bank rather foreclose and own a house or foreclose and own a business, right?
Yeah,
They can resell the
right.
house. They don't want to be in a business.
No.
So I just find it fascinating, but that just goes to show where the government is focused, right? They want more businesses here locally in the US, so they're going to incentivize us to go out and purchase assets and purchase, businesses, trucks, whatever it is that you need to help grow your business, and they're going to offer you a lower interest rate because they're putting that as a priority.
Yeah, I think it's a tremendous opportunity, and we share the same passion point in that helping entrepreneurs is so vital, not just for the economy, but locally in the communities and cultures. And so you're touching that daily with Empower Her Money, right? You're helping entrepreneurs, hundreds of them, to achieve success. What are you seeing as the common blind spots financially for most entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so I'll speak specifically about women because that is
Okay.
my primary focus and what I study on. We touched on it a little bit more, women in the workforce, while the gap is definitely much narrower than it used to be, we're just not as comfortable as our counterparts in asking for raises or asking for more money. We're more of the mindset where we're going to earn it first and then ask for it later, whereas our male counterparts have more confidence, been in the game a little bit longer, and they're going to ask for it up front and then show you later. And we're shifting and transitioning, but we're in this huge wealth transfer right now. And this is why, for me, the education piece is so important for anybody wanting to, change their generation, to break a cycle of poverty. We're having this wealth transfer where we have so many business owners that are part of this baby boomer generation that want to retire, but their kids didn't grow up in the business. Their kids don't want to take over the business. We don't want to let these small businesses die if they're, serving the community, if they're being profitable, if there's a way for us to do that. There's so much opportunity right now, but it really does start with that individual. You have to get educated. You have to find a mentor or coach that works for you. Figure out what it is that you want to learn more about. I don't necessarily believe in passion. Real estate for me, I'm very passionate about. I've been in it for 25 years. It's not something I just decided to, get into. But figuring out what is going to motivate you to get up every day, learn more, spend a little bit of time every day, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Podcasts are free. YouTube is free. I have no Netflix subscriptions, right? I watch YouTube at nighttime, funny videos or education, but I really control what comes into my brain because that's how I output to the world. And when you can do that and change the way that your family has lived, it's just such an amazing feeling.
I totally agree. You mentioned kind of the passion piece. Do you think that people chasing passion businesses, is that a trapping? And what should they do to reframe kind of how they approach a business?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I'm speaking again directly to women because I've got a lot more experience than. But when I find that women, start baking cookies or doing crafts or something that they're passionate about, they hate charging for it. So they don't make money. They hate telling people about it, So it's like, I get you're passionate about something, but until you learn how to run a business and become profitable from that passion, then keep it as a side project and figure out another way to support your family. Passion can turn into profit, but it doesn't start that way.
Right. I also find that, when you get into the business of whatever that thing is, and say you're passionate about bicycling and you're going to open a bike store, now all of a sudden you're not on the bike anymore. Now you're, have the HR hat and the finance hat and all these different things going on, and potentially you strip away your ability to actually do that passion item. And so I think that also is something to be cautious of. Yeah.
Yeah, agree with you 100% on that one.
Just so I have it make it really tangible, can you share a story of a female entrepreneur that you've worked with and kind of what that transformation has been for them as working with you and going through your program?
Yeah, so the first thing I normally start off with is the financials. I want to look at what the financial house looks like. For me, as a business owner, you can build the most incredible business, but if your financial house is not in order, it's going to crumble. That's the most important for me. So we take a look first at the financials. What are you spending money on? Are there subscriptions? What is actually profitable? So I did have a client who had 7 different items that they were selling, right? These are tangible items. It was a whole line of products because they really liked all of those 7 items. But when we dove deeper into what does each item cost? How many of your clients are repeat clients coming back for that item? And what is the profitability of each of those items? We could see that those 7 items, while very popular to the owner, were not as popular to consumers. So if we cut back and just produce more and advertise more of the ones that were being profitable, her numbers skyrocketed. Now, that doesn't mean you have to necessarily get rid of those, but let's focus and advertise and put your time, energy, and effort into what's making you money. So the owner who wasn't looking at the financials didn't really know that everybody didn't love all 7 products, but we kept the top 3 and we really started using social media to advertise and focus on those 3. We also got an influencer, which I learned a whole lot about how influencers get paid, which is incredible. But having that person to not only test the product for free, work with it for a little bit, then endorse it, helps to drive more sales to something that had the highest profitable margin for all of those 7 products. But you still have the other ones because you're the owner and you love to have them, that's fine. But let's spend the dollars, the marketing and the energy on the ones that are going to make you more money so that you can, maybe have some creativity and do some other projects going forward. So I think that, the money part of it for me is just the most important to start with.
Yeah, it's so counterintuitive to focus on less to make more, but it's a great learning in there. So you see entrepreneurs often reach kind of this, I don't know, $250,000, $500,000 revenue threshold and have a hard time breaking through. What are the common money systems or hiring decisions that people need to make in order to break through that ceiling?
Yes, so we've talked already about the importance of mentors and coaches. I also believe in the right groups. So you're a brand new business owner starting off, the Chamber of Commerce, BNI, great networking because there are going to be successful people within those groups that are a couple steps ahead of you, which is what you need at that moment. But when you get to a point where you are the person being asked the most questions, perhaps you're the most successful in the room based on numbers. I'm not talking about like anything other than your profit and your bottom line.
Right.
Then you need to find a new room. I constantly, even at this point in my life, am putting myself in rooms where I feel like I don't belong. When I'm in a room that I'm uncomfortable, that I don't want to ask, like I want to ask questions but not answer questions, and I know that there are people there that are 10, 15, 20 steps ahead of me, then I know I'm in the right room. And so when I see entrepreneurs, they kind of plateau and they don't know what to do next, it's because they don't know what to do next. So
Right.
you need to find an entrepreneur that's done things that you haven't so that you can learn and perhaps be coached by them, but you have to get into different rooms in order to do that. And there's plenty of opportunities in the US to be able to do that.
So that's excellent advice. I mean, I really believe strongly in that. You're kind of the sum of the folks that you surround yourself with, and making sure you level up those people around you is a great path for yourself. How do you find those groups? How do you go about identifying that next rung of performers, and how do you get into that group?
Yeah. So I think you can relate to this, but one of my projects I did while I was post-sale and finding things to do is I launched a podcast. And I think what the podcast did for me is it really taught me how to ask questions, to go deep dive into questions. You can go to an event and meet maybe 2 people max and really deep dive into questions to get to know them, especially if you find someone that you kind of uncover might be a little bit further ahead of you in business. Spend time, get to know them, and then give back. I am such a giver. If we're having this conversation and I can think about something that I can help you with, then I'll take a note of that, and after the event, I do it right away. Otherwise, I will forget. But, getting into places can be difficult. But I spend a lot of money to get into those places, and I don't see it as spending the money. It's the investment in my own education so that I can get to that next level, so that I can impact more people and give back, because at the end of the day, that's my goal. The more that I can create income, the more opportunities I can create, the more people I impact, and that to me is so much more important.
That's fantastic. I feel the same way. I love giving to others, and I also think that it's super important to show up to those with vulnerability, right? If you go in and you're just with too much bravado about what you've achieved, then you limit your ability to take in information and knowledge, and I think that's also really critical. I got a question for you. So around, as you're building businesses and you're helping women entrepreneurs to invest in their businesses and their own financial literacy, how do you recommend that they make investment? Do they continue just to go all in on the business? Do they diversify and take care of their own needs? And how do you balance the needs of the business with the needs of the individual?
Depends on what level they're at.
Okay.
So I really dive in to get to know my clients. If they're a brand new business, keeping it as a side hustle while they have their full-time job so that they can pay their bills or support their family is important. But bringing the family into our coaching sessions as well is important because I want the husband, the kids to understand that we are working on a bigger picture. And they may not always see that in the time that this person might be spending on these, side hustles. So it really depends on the person. If they're kind of more mid-level, I like to have a little fun. Myself, for example, I'm a big whiskey drinker. So part of my investment portfolio is in whiskey. Well, I can go to Ireland, I can go to Scotland, I can go to Australia and go taste whiskey, and it's still part of my investment, right? But I want to have some fun with it. It shouldn't all be business all the time. And figuring out what's important to that person, not just their passion, but like what kind of values are important to you. I'm a Christian, so church is important to me. Being able to tithe is important to me. Figuring out what it is for that person and customizing a plan based around what they want to do in their life. What do they want to accomplish and who's around them? And so it's not a one set plan. It has to be individual for the person because we're all individuals.
For sure, for sure. I think the other thing too is, you've, as you said, maybe had the unfortunate luck of starting businesses right before, some major market corrections or other challenges, but you've now been through a number of cycles. As you're looking at where we are now and where we're headed, what sort of advice are you giving to the folks that you're working with in terms of how they approach, savings and investment and the markets?
Yeah, so if you're in the real estate industry and already investing in real estate, really paying attention to the numbers right now is important. I am part of some real estate investing groups, and while I see groups bringing together syndications, which is a group of investors coming together to buy, say, an apartment complex, paying attention to the debt and paying attention to what you're forecasting in the future. So, for example, we'll take the commercial, apartment complex, for example. We're not thinking that interest rates are going to go down because they may not, and where they're at right now is pretty healthy, so we don't know where that's going to go. So I'm not going to forecast that in the future the rates are going to go down or in the future rents are going to go up, because I really think we are seeing a shift in the way that people are living. If we can create smaller units, smaller houses, smaller apartments, I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming forward, especially like you might be similar with your son, but my daughter who's about to graduate college, she says, I could live in a shoebox. I don't care as long as I get to travel or I get to do this.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think the values have shifted so much, right? So paying attention to where the trends are going so that you can be in the right trajectory and the right path, I think is very important. I still believe in home ownership, having a home. I like being debt-free for my personal house, but when it comes to my investments, I'm not. So it has to be, figure out what your personality is. What kind of risks are you willing to take in order to do that? And just learn one lane. Real estate investing is a huge category. There's tax liens and tax deed sales. I'm in Florida, and so I'm about, paying attention to that because the tax lien auction's coming up. But it's picking one lane and really diving in and learning and being educated on it before you invest, and then you can expand from there.
That's great advice. So as you've made this transition from an operator to coach educator, how do you go about protecting your time despite all the challenges of your businesses and your clients? How do you organize that?
I don't like to say no. I have a really, really hard time saying no.
Me
So I
too.
tend to time block. And when I time block, then I'm like, okay, I have to record 5 podcasts Thursday, 7 to 12, so nothing else comes in that schedule. And then figuring out it's in front of me. I have a huge whiteboard, and what am I focusing on right now? What do I want to learn more? Where's my connections? Because for myself, and I believe this is true for most of us, is when we see something and we focus on it and we keep it top of mind, those opportunities come. Like the door opens. This is how we got on a podcast, is because I'm very focused in tax liens and tax deeds right now.
Right.
And someone asked me about it and made a huge connection for me. And so when I find that I write my goals out and I block my time, then when the right opportunity comes along, it just fits into my world. But I don't have to say no to the wrong opportunity because I'm not focused on it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious, when you do your time blocking, are you thoughtful about when you're blocking based upon your energy or things like that? And how do you go about that tactically?
Oh yeah, I'm a morning person, so I get up, I have dogs. I live in a condo. So I get up, walk the dogs. I go cold plunge in sauna. In my sauna, I listen to motivation or a podcast, something that starts off my day in the manner in which I want to, attack the day. So having that time block in the morning really helps my body, helps my mind to tackle whatever it is during the day. And what I find is even the biggest of problems don't seem as big because I've started the day correctly. So that's how I time block the morning. And then the evening time, I don't do much in the evening unless I'm speaking at an event. But I love to end the day with funny videos, as silly as that sounds, to let the mind relax at nighttime, to go to sleep in a happy mood. You'd be surprised on how much sleep you get and how much better you feel when you wake up in the morning.
Very good. Very intentional. I like that. I'm curious, at this stage, you've accomplished a lot, and you're adding back, you're giving, of yourself. As you're looking at opportunities or partnerships at this point, how do you balance kind of income versus impact? What is the driver for you at this point?
Yeah, so at this stage for me, I mentioned I'm getting ready to launch a new company again, but I'm also looking at my impact. So if I have a business owner that perhaps I know can help get to the next couple of levels, instead of doing a partnership or perhaps a coaching with them, what I'll do is a revenue share agreement. And so we'll track where they're at today and we'll continue to track where they go forward. And then in that increase of revenue, I participate in that. So I'm not the owner of a company. I don't have a partnership, because I feel like those can be very difficult to unwind. It's almost worse than a divorce. Yeah. So if I can have an agreement that has an easy entry and an easy exit for me, then I can really focus and help that business owner to grow in areas that perhaps they're not thinking about. I'm more able to introduce them to relationships because I'm sharing in that upside. More income for them, more income for me, more income that we can use to impact the society around us. But it's fun for me at this point. I enjoy it. I like watching other people grow because I remember what it feels like to be in that position, and now to help someone else do it and come for full circle like that. Yeah. It's just such an incredible opportunity, and I'm very grateful to God to be able to be in this time period of life to be able to have that kind of impact on other people.
That's really cool. I got to imagine those opportunities are plentiful. I mean, how are you? You must be really discerning about which ones you want to get involved in, which ones you don't. What does that evaluation look like? How do you determine, this is something I want to go all in on, or this is something I need to pass on?
Yeah, for me, it was years of practice in the real estate industry focused on culture, because then you can understand, personality profiles, seeing how people moved through difficult situations, challenging them, talking to them about scripts, figuring out what their weakness is. And does that align with what I can help them with? Now, if it's like an AI company that wants to do marketing, that's not my strength. I'm definitely not going to sign up to help them because it would be a detriment to them, and I would feel bad not being able to help them. But really understanding who they are, where they come from, where they want to go, what drives them, where they're heart-centered, things like that are important to me, and those are things that I need to uncover before we even talk about any type of partnership.
Very good. As you're driving Empower Her Money, I think you have an objective of getting that to like 9 figures. And what does the blueprint look like for you at this point? What kind of foundational moves are you making around teams or process or systems to make that happen?
Yeah, so this world has shifted so fast these last couple of years.
Yes.
I was joking I went to an AI conference last week, and they could have been talking Chinese. I really don't understand it. I wish I could, but this is something I'm working on. But for me, for the future, I'm all about relationship building. I think that even with the advancement in technology and AI, there still needs to be a leader. There still needs to be someone who's running those companies. We're not at a point, and I don't think I will see the point where an AI is going to completely run a company without any human. But I think that still knowing relationships and understanding how to bring people to the table and to help people, come along with you, not dragging them. But the leadership skill is going to be so important still. So I'm focused there. And if we get to a point where AI is going to be taking over, then I'm buying a farm in like Indiana, and I'm just going to go hide out for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I don't see it taking over either, but I think, Angela, you're on the right point. I think most of us are a little bit uncertain about, what's possible with it, and how to adopt it, and how to make it work for us versus, taking over. I'm found for myself one of the biggest challenges is my own awareness of what's possible with AI, and just trying to open my perspective of where should I apply it and how can I apply it, and I think similar to what you do already with your content consumption, right? Whether it be in the mornings or in the evenings, I'm finding for myself that I need to allocate time and just learn about what people are doing with it and what tools are out there. And I don't know, I found that to be helpful, but it does feel like it's evolving so quickly, and but there's so much potential with it. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, in real estate, we're not at a point where AI can build an apartment complex by itself. There's tools that they can use, but you're still needing that human touch. I think there's going to be a lot of industries that still need that human touch. And so if you don't spend the time to educate yourself, like you said, consume information, then you can't move forward with the technology, and you might be left behind. You might have to shift to something else. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about how, if we don't continue with the shift and learn and grow with it, that we could become a country that we've never seen before. Like, we could reach poverty levels that this country has never seen before because our people didn't adapt the way that they needed to advance, to go with the culture. And that's kind of a scary thought to think about.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is probably one of those moments, in our history where things are evolving so quickly that it could really change things radically if we're not part of that process. I think I just heard the other day that, unlike Moore's law, where technology doubles, like in AI, they're saying that we're seeing a doubling every 7 months, which is mind-boggling. So yeah, to stay on top of that is really critical.
Yes, and for anyone listening and watching, we're not AI, we're actually real people.
That's true. Two people still talking. Yeah. Angela, tell us how people can find out more about Empower Her Money and find you online.
Yeah, so Empower Her Money Podcast is my Instagram handle. It's where I post most of my content. If you're looking for another podcast to add to your list, definitely check out Empower Her Money Podcast. I love teaching, and really, I just appreciate the time today.
Likewise, it's been a pleasure to have you here, and I think you shared a lot of wisdom, and hopefully people do something positive with it. Please subscribe or share this with a friend or colleague that can also find value from it. Thanks again, Angela. It's been great.